A&P, now known as Super Thrift, is it?
Super fresh. Super fresh.
Super Fresh. I asked them if they had Napoleons. They said, we didn't bake any today. However, I said, do you ever bake them? They said, yes. Well, what do you charge for them when you do bake them? So this girl looked up the list she had, the numerical order, or alphabetical order, and found $3 for $1.59. I said, that's 53 cents a piece. That isn't bad, you know. I might have mentioned that down in Washington they charge about $1.
What did they charge down there?
Oh, $2.
We didn't ask, did we?
That fancy pastry stuff.
I don't know that we asked. But, well, the place up in Hagerstown charges 50 cents, right?
Yeah.
The cookie jar or whatever they call it. But I'll bet you, if you ordered a Napoleon in a restaurant, they'd want $3 just for one serving.
Oh, yeah. Any kind of a cake or pastry, I think, costs that much now. I remember when I was in Scotland, in Edinburgh, the value of $1 was so great for Scottish people that were poor. There was one Scottish old man who came up to me and he said, apparently he knew I was from the United States with my accent or my clothing or something. He says, is there any way I could be of service to you so that you would pay me in dollars? And I said, no, I'm afraid there isn't. However, I did go to a shoe store up there, and shoes were so reasonable to get English brogues, you might call them. I bought a pair of shoes.
For how much?
Oh, about $5, I think. And he said, do you want your old shoes repaired? And I said, well, yes, but I'm going back to the United States. And they said, well, repair them and we'll mail them to you. And of course, the postage, when they finally did come, and they did a great job. Half soles and heels, and they cost almost as much as a new pair of shoes in the United States.
What'd you say? Have them sent COD?
Yeah, had them sent COD. And that was another thing I was doing. I wanted to buy a car. I didn't have much money, and I thought I was going to stretch this out for a long time when I was in France. But up in Scotland, they had a car advertised, and I went to look at it, and it was in a garage, a private person's garage. It was jacked up on blocks of wood. It was kind of a mess. I think it would have cost about $300. But I figured by the time we get it off the blocks and pump up the tires and get gas and then pay for exporting it to the United States would cost me a lot of money. So I didn't buy that. Of course, they had rationing in England and Scotland, and I recall being in a bakery store, and I wanted to buy some candy or some cake or something, and they said, oh, you must have ration stamps for that. And I said, well, I'm an American, I don't have any. And some poor-looking person in the store said, you may have my stamps, sir.
You didn't take them from them, did you?
So I did take them.
You took them?
Yeah, well, I said, if you don't need them. He said, I never use them. So they gave me a few stamps, and I bought the cake, whatever it was, cookies or something.
Why did they have rationing? That was in 52.
That was in 52, and I think in Great Britain, I think at that time there was still a shortage of different kinds of food, like sugar, or I don't know about meat, I know. But in the United States, when I worked in the bank in Manhattan, or was it Chemical Bank in before the war, we used to take deposits of tokens from the butchers and bakers and the grocers. They bring them in, deposit them just like dollars to their accounts.
Now you're talking about in the early 1940s, right?
Probably, yeah, 1940. And I had to go down into the hall where we kept the tokens, that little plastic or cardboard, looked like a dime, and we put them in trays, and we kept them diligently, and this was valuable. This was like money. However, when the rationing finally came off, they sent us instructions to cremate everything in the vault, the tokens and the stamps. And then we wondered why we were so honest about counting them and keeping a number of
You
them.
never took any?
No. The only thing they did was, when we get a book of ration stamps with gasoline, we sometimes shake it, and if one of the tokens, one of the stamps fell off, you didn't know where to put it back, so
You
you
put it in your pocket.
were able to buy some gasoline. Not very much, a couple gallons.
That reminds me of when I was working in Mexico in 1947, and the boys used to be so rough with the bonds, and the coupons would get torn off. Remember, I must have told you about that before.
Yeah, that's,
There was 1 week I was there by myself, because Mac came up to New York. I don't know when, but halfway through that 5 months we were there, he had to come up to the office in New York, and so I was supposed to be in charge of all those Mexican kids that were working for Beto in our department there.
how many were in the department?
Oh, boy. Well, I don't know. I suppose there were 30 or so in the department, but not working with me, maybe half a dozen or so that were working with me. We had to read every bond number against the number on the coupon somehow. I don't know, but of course they would read it in Spanish, and I'm trying to keep up with them, whatever. If I read it, I suppose I was reading it in English. I don't know. But anyway, at the end of the day, when we had to take them down to the vault, they'd stack the bonds up on a dolly, you know, about, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet high. They'd make a stack of them. And the darn kids would take it out, and I had to go down with them to the vault. And they'd take it out the door of the office. And then from that all the way down the hall to the elevator, they'd sit on this thing and ride it like a skateboard or something. And the coupons started getting torn off. I was frantic. And nothing I could do to make them stop. And finally, I had it. And I went back, and by this time, I'm saying to Bet, I'm half crying. He said, "What's the matter? What's the matter, Miss Hartford?" I said, "Those boys, they're they're tearing off the coupons. You've got to do something about it." So he got up and he went out and he balled them out. Well, anyway, we had the coupons here for sugar,
Yeah.
butter.
Mm-hmm.
What's the other? What else?
Meat.
Coffee,
Meat and
coffee,
coffee.
meat.
That was trying times.
That's when Flirt, the collie, brought home a pound of butter from somebody.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know how in the world it was on somebody's back porch, but apparently it was, and she came home with it in her mouth.
I remember. Well, the butchers used to give the bank employees a preferential service. You couldn't get lamb chops, but I went in and I was from the bank, and we'd wrap it up, and nobody could see him wrap up the lamb chops. I paid the full price. I didn't have any coupons, and he gave me a pound of lamb chops. Well, that's what you call full.
Well, and I'm sure I've told you about that friend of mine during war, Norman, whose family had a dairy farm out in Minnesota, and he went home he had a furlough. I think he was stationed at Camp Dix at the time in Jersey, and he went out to Minnesota on this furlough, and when he came back on the train, and he came back with a thermos bottle full of heavy cream for us. It was just Mother and me, well, and Dick, because Uncle Lionel was working down in Kentucky at that time. A thermos bottle of heavy cream and a pound of butter and some deer meat, which probably, I don't think he shot it because he wasn't home long enough, and probably his father or somebody had shot it. But the biggest hit was this thermos bottle full of heavy cream.
That would be good. Just the thing for calorie counting.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing like ice cold cream. I mean, not cold cream, but
Yeah.
Walter Neal's sister, who lived in Middletown, Pennsylvania, they used to have a spring house, and they raised dairy cows, and down in the spring house, which was sort of a rock enclosed hole in the ground, they kept the cream and the milk, and you get down there and she gives you a cupful, delicious, ice cold.
Well, of course, we were used to cream because, remember that the milk bottles, and they were glass, they had a separate the top of the bottle kind of bulged out a little bit, and that's where the cream all went up to the top. And you'd get a cup of cream or something out of a quart of milk?
Yeah.
Pretty heavy.
Hardly think about it now. Even the regular milk now doesn't have cream in it. They must take that
No,
out.
because it's homogenized. It's
Yeah.
presumably mixed in. A regular milk, not skim milk. But when the milkman left the milk in the morning outside, like they did in the winter, I remember seeing it, especially at my grandmother's, I think they'd leave it. I don't know where they left it there. I guess it was home in Maplewood. But it would freeze, and the top of the cardboard lid of the milk bottle would raise up because the cream would freeze and all puff up out the top. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it looked like we say it is. The milk bottle has a collar,
Yeah.
and it would have its neck sticking out about an inch, 2 inches. And but I think that was after they had the cream in the balloon-shaped tops to the bottles. I think that was afterwards because they came up thin, same thickness as the later bottles. I remember as a child, we went across the street in Brooklyn to Coster's grocery store, and usually you took a tin can, and you got the milk in a tin can.
Very unsanitary, no doubt.
There was no rules of sanitation, and always they allowed us to have a piece of candy, you pick out your own petty candy out of the back of the counter.
It was like those cookie jars. Now, they've sort of gotten back to that in the supermarkets now, where you can take the pinchers and take the cookies out and put them in a bag.
Yeah.
But then they had cookie jars that everybody just put their hand in.
Well, I guess they did. Now when you see an antique store, it's supposed to be old time, they have the Cracker Barrels.
They have a
Barrels
scoop,
where
maybe.
they have soda biscuits, like Evita biscuits. And they used to have all different types of things. Like one of the main things they had was coffee. And they had a big coffee grinder. And you'd buy a pound of coffee and you'd have it ground. And nothing smells as good as ground, fresh coffee.
Yeah, my grandma and grandpa used to always shop in an A&P. We started off talking about an A&P in Brooklyn over on Flatbush Avenue. And you'd go over there and stand there and watch them grind the coffee while you waited.
And put the bag underneath, top of the bag open, slide it underneath. It would always fill it up, a pound of coffee. Always
It always
filled it
came
right
out even.
to the top.
How come?
Then they tamp it down and fold it over.
Yeah, it
dip
always smelled good.
Yeah.
But that's when they would stand there and order all the stuff look up at the shelf and say, I want a jar of this and a can of that, and the guy would go running here, there, and everywhere, bring them over and put them on the counter.
And he had those tongs that
Yeah, to reach with.
they would reach up and take the can off the top shelf. But then the shopper always sat on a stool.
Yeah, right.
And the grocer would take the paper bag that he's going to put the groceries in, and he'd pencil, a little short pencil, and he'd put each thing that he put down there, add it up
On the bag.
on the bag. You got home, you had a list. But the beauty of that was ordering a pound of butter. He turned around, slide the door open, take a long, sharp, not a broad knife, and this tub of butter, he just cut out a piece of butter and put on the scale, and 9 times out of 10 was exactly a pound of butter. And it wasn't until much later that when you order a pound of anything, it's always misconstrued. They only give you a little more, and then they say, well, will you take a pound and a quarter? Because if you were particular, you'd say, no, I only want a pound, and you'd have to cut it off and put it back. But that was good butter, and it was salt butter. And you could eat that with a spoon. In fact, Christine liked butter so much, my father thought he'd cure her, and he put down a pound of butter, and he said, well, help yourself. She ate it.
She was sick, wasn't she?
I don't remember
Did that make
that.
her sick? I would think it
But I
would.
think he had to stop her.
Yeah.
He thought he'd cure her of eating butter.
Getting back to the milkman, that was when I'm talking about the cream coming up and all, that's when the milkman was delivering by horse and wagon. Now that was when Dick was born in 1930, because as you know, our house was like, what, 4 houses up from the corner of Prospect Street,
Yeah.
and they'd come like 6 o'clock in the morning, and they'd either come up the street or down the street with whatever they were, and the horses' feet were clop, 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 clop. And what did they do? Woke up Dick, the baby, every morning at 6 o'clock, whereas he might have slept till 7, or he might have slept till 8, depending, whatever. But wake him up every morning, because Mother's room was in the front of the house. So she asked the milkman, please, don't come up the street when you come get here. Leave the wagon down at the corner and walk up. And he did.
Yeah.
He did.
The milkman,
He left the horse down there and walked up.
the milkman used to have a basket that would hold
Yeah.
something like 12 quart bottles of milk. And he'd go up. And of course, he didn't have to get in and say giddy up to the horse. The horse
No, the horse knew where they were going.
would run right along just about the speed he would go. And
Well, in fact, the horse, I remember the horse just continuing slowly. The guy would get out and go to the house, and before he'd get back, the horse was starting to plod on up to the next house.
and even in Whitestone, not only was there a milkman, but there used to be a bread man.
Oh, we had a bread man, but he came in a truck.
Well, yeah, I guess he came in the truck.
Yeah.
But they would deliver a loaf of bread or 2 loaves of bread. And sometimes
Cake,
eggs.
cake.
Eggs,
Oh, there was an egg man.
yeah. So,
But the bread man had cake also. Yeah, there was an egg man, and then of course there was the ice man who came in the horse and wagon.
of course, the Iceman,
The ice man cometh.
our Irish maids, they were married to icemen. And when they took Christine and myself over to their house one time, my parents were at a reception or a party or something, and they invited us to have dinner with them. And I noticed that all over the wall they had pictures of the back of the ice wagons, and there was a wagon, and there was their brother or their father with one foot on the steps of the ice pick, and the ice tongs hanging there. And of course, I won't tell you what kind of a dinner they gave us, because you've heard that one before.
Did I? Like what?
Well, they gave us some pig's head.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know they were the ones who gave it
And
to you.
we didn't believe it was pig's head. And they said, well, we'll prove it to you. And they showed us in the garbage can. There was the pig's eyes.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, you know, do you remember at Mother's house, our house on Oakland Road, behind the, where the breakfast room used to be, and where the two closets, one had the refrigerator and the other one had canned goods in there. But where the refrigerator was used to be the ice box. And that there was a door, and on the outside, a little door, so that when the iceman came, he didn't have to come through the kitchen and drip his ice all across the floor. He could open that door from the outside of the house, that little door, and put the ice in from the back. And the same thing, the other closet had a door for the milkman, and he used to open that and slide the milk bottles in on the floor of that closet. That was a good idea.
We had an Italian family in Whitestone that lived up on a hill off of Bayside Avenue. And they had 2 or 3 wagons, and they'd come around and they sold vegetables from the wagons, or rather the trucks. And when I went up there one time, it was just like being in Italy. All the people they had a picnic table, and the wives and the children were dressed just like they would be in Italy. That was I guess the father, he was like the godfather. And all the sons, each had their own wagon or their truck.
Where was that? Where were you living?
In Whitestone.
In Whitestone?
And it was sort of like a colony. I don't know. I often wonder what happened to them. They probably joined the mafia.
I wonder if Polly found her cat last night. Speaking of cats.
Yeah. I wonder if Nancy and your Aunt Helen, Pussy, helped her move. Or whether Nancy's husband, Richie, is retired yet.
Oh, yeah, he's retired. I don't know who helped move.
Maybe. I wonder if they put all the furniture in.
I don't know.
I wonder if they have a bed in the 3rd bedroom, so that when we come down there and visit them.
They were expecting us to visit them, but I didn't ask but if they had a bed in that room.
Oh.
But I'm sure they must have.
You have to bring a mattress.
I'm not bringing any mattress. Anyway.
I wonder if they moved down near Carl.
Where does he live?
Someplace in North Carolina. Or maybe it's South Carolina. And I think he lives there with 3 of his 4 sons.
Well...
And the other son is in Baltimore, and he's a builder.
Did he get married again?
No. He's still married as far as I know.
What do you mean? I thought he was Marion's ex-husband.
No, you're thinking of Carl Kaiser.
Oh, who's this we're talking about?
This is Carl Schulte, Christine Schulte's brother, the second brother. The first one was named Gerd. Gerd went to Los Angeles and got married.
And stayed there.
He was the architect that designed the City Hall in Los Angeles.
He stayed out there, right?
He stayed out there, and he and his wife passed away, as Bill Sherwood would say, with the golf sticks over their shoulder, probably.
Well, then I met this Carl Schulte you're talking about in Baltimore at his son's house.
We went with Christine Schulte, too.
Oh, we didn't go with Christine. She was dead already. When the last time we went to Christine's house after she died, that guy was out in the field. Who was that old guy? Willie somebody?
Willie.
No, it was one of her nephews that was so mad because he wasn't going to inherit anything. And he told us where the Schulte fellow lived in Baltimore, who was a carpenter.
Yeah.
And then we went there, and Carl's wife was there, and she's the one that blinks her eyes or does something funny
Yeah.
with her with her eyes.
Yes, she sort of blinks them and then sort of looks skyward.
And they live in North Carolina?
I believe they are in one of the Carolinas. It'd be funny if it was in the same town or something that Holly or Nancy have moved to now. And we'll have to check.
Well, you
into
don't
that.
want to look him up again, do you?
Well, he's probably dead because he's probably 90 or more years of age. He is a carpenter.
No, the father I'm talking about.
Carl
He was a carpenter too?
Carpenter, yes.
Oh.
And he did a lot of work on the houses down on the Severn River under the supervision of Uncle Lou Kaiser. And Uncle Lou Kaiser would get Carl Schulte, who was his nephew, to make repairs. And he'd always said it was so beneficial to do something substantial that lasted. And of course, ordering Carl Schulte to fix a porch or something is very satisfying.
To order somebody to do it.
Yes, and he would supervise.
So Christine Schulte's mother was your father's sister.
Yeah, Emma,
How many sisters did he have?
4 or 5. 4 or 5, and I just don't recall the names. It was Josephine, that was Joe. Or was it Johanna? Well, I have to look that up. And Emma, and the one that went to Germany and married Meineke, who Meineke. It's spelled just like the automobile muffler company. And he was the head of the trolley cars in Frankfurt on Main in Germany. And he and his wife have had 4 sons. And we have a picture of their backyard. It shows Mr. Meineke, my father's sister, my father's mother, and another sister. I think they probably went over there to see this sister that went to Germany and had these children. And that was all about when my father was under a scholarship studying in Germany, and must have been about 1880 when he was about 18, I guess. So that's, for some reason, this older sister wanted to go back to Germany, and I guess she had met this man or something.
Well, when the wind blows, it's cool, but other than that, it's hot. I just looked at the thermometer here by the door, and it's 88, and the one on the thermostat is 86. They always are 2 degrees apart. Well,
our thermometer on the tree says 70s.
well, that's not right either, of course.
That's wrong. It hasn't moved for a month or 2.
But I guess when you get older, the heat bothers you more than when you're young. I know the summers used to be hot, but I guess when you're young, it doesn't bother you that much. That's why Mother always complained. She didn't like summer, but she didn't like daylight saving, because she always said instead of starting the dinner at 5 o'clock sun time would be, it was only 4 o'clock sun time when she would have to start the dinner, and it was one of the hottest parts of the day. So I'm beginning to sympathize with her. I didn't sympathize with her then, but I do now, because she always said you can always put more clothes on if you're cold, but you can't do anything about it if you're hot. You can't
unless you're down the beach and you take the clothes off.
Well, yeah, but you can still be hot at the beach as far as that goes.
Could be.
No, even if you took all your clothes off, which you're not apt to do, you can't really get cool, whereas you can get warmer. I understand what she was saying. I was thinking yesterday about, I don't know what made me start thinking about Eddy Farm, but it seems to me I spent a lot of time up there, I know, and Mother was there most of those times, although sometimes I was there just with my grandparents. But how could my father afford that? He wasn't there. He was working. I suppose he came up weekends, but he certainly didn't commute up there. I don't know how he could afford it. I can't imagine what the rates were. Couldn't have been very much. And then Grandma and Grandpa were there 2 months every summer.
He must have gotten a good vacation. Or he took time off.
It was before he was retired, of course. It was for years, and I don't know. As he no longer, he worked maybe at the Equitable. After some years you did get 2 months, or else maybe he got a month and he took one off without pay. I don't know. But I don't know how he could afford it either.
The only way to do was find out from the treasurer if they looked in that book where he had signed his name.
Oh, the hotel registry, you mean?
Yeah, Mills at the Eddy Farm book. And you could ask them what the going rates were when they...
Oh, well, sure, they would know.
It was for an interesting
They would know. Well, I mean, the whole family was there. My great-grandmother was there with them. And Fashes, Auntie Helen, Uncle Bill would come up now and then. They didn't stay a long time, but they'd come up for a weekend, I suppose. And Uncle Al was there, and Auntie. And Mother's, all those friends of Mother's, and her cousin, and Lilius's mother, Clara, and the whole gang of them were there all the time.
How did they get there?
On the train.
Where would they get it? At Hoboken?
No, in New York. I suppose the, oh, yeah, it did go from Hoboken, but, well, how would they get to Hoboken? Any of them. They all lived in Brooklyn. Maybe they did, but that's the Erie. Was the Erie? No, the Lackawanna. From Hoboken. In those days, it was the Lackawanna. I don't know, but they went to Port Jervis, and then maybe they had to change. Although I don't think so. I think it was the same train all the way up. Maybe one time I remember coming home from there with Mother on the train, and that was the time that I had a puppy that somebody up there gave me. And we brought the puppy down on the train. I remember that. Other than that, I don't know how we got there. But
what recreation did your grandfather have, aside from possibly rocking on one of those rocking chairs?
oh, the ladies rocked on the porch. Well, he fished. He fished every day, I'm sure, a lot of the day, by himself, unless he got me to go out and row the boat. But other than that, I think he was always out there by himself. And of course, the women could go in the river.
Go in the river.
Swim in the river.
Did they wear those old-fashioned bathing suits?
Yeah, right. Down to their knees. And stockings up to their knees, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have pictures of... Well, I don't think I have any pictures of them in bathing suits. I have of myself. But, and then, I guess, practically every night, it was a farm. It wasn't like it is now, you know. There wasn't any golf course. They had tennis courts. And so a lot of the women played tennis, and the men. Mm-hmm. And then every night there was a baseball game after dinner. They had a little grandstand there over by the cornfield. And that's where I got the habit of walking in a cornfield, because while the game, I guess I would get bored with the game and I'd take a walk, and I'd love to walk through the corn. I guess that's where that started.
Aunt Margaret?
Marge.
She'd go up there too.
Well, yeah, but of course she was bored to death because all her her two sisters, well, they were married by then. Anyway, Mother and Aunt Helen were, and not in the early days. They would go before they were married. They went too, but she was usually pretty bored because she didn't have anybody. You know, she didn't have any boyfriends or anything.
Were there single men up there too?
A few. Like Uncle Al. He was probably about 20
Was that
or less.
Before he went in the Navy or after?
Well, both. Didn't we see in the register they started going up there in 1911? Well, Mother was married then. I guess she didn't go up before she was married. Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
You told me she did.
Yeah, because it's a postcard that she sent to my father. That's the way it was worded. They weren't married yet, but there were a few young men.
You said the women all slept in a attic, like with a lot of cots or beds.
Well, they had in the main house. They had the top floor was like open, and I don't know really who used it. I think that was more young fellows that might have been up there. But then that place they call the annex, which is still there, that's attached to the main building by that dance pavilion thing they have now. Our family had rooms over there different times. That's where they had the room. Mother and a couple of her girlfriends, I don't know, were in one room, and my grandparents were in another. But they were on the first floor of the annex, and the boys, the young men, I should say, their friends, stuffed all the frogs under the door, under their bedroom door. Scared them to death.
Must have been little frogs.
They were all up on the bed. Well, you can imagine that the door didn't close exactly properly. There was always a space under the door. Or the transom over the door. You could put them in the transom, too. They screamed their heads off until Grandpa came to their rescue.
It was the minister's daughter. She was supposed to be something like Shirley, the sewing machine girl. And the man was going to close the mortgage, the villain. And the hero was some young fellow. He saved the day at the last minute. I was in this play. What I was doing, I don't remember. But in the Presbyterian church, it had to be a great motive for good. I mean, it couldn't be a bad thing.
Well, the Prospectors was Presbyterian, too. Prospectors was a Presbyterian church, too.
Yeah, well, they're not as bad as the Methodists, but the straight-laced Methodists, I used to like this girl. She was a twin. Her name was Catherine Keeler. Her sister's name was Mary, but they were not identical. Mary was blonde, tall. Catherine was moderate height, black hair, wore it like a boy. She was always bathing on the beach in a form-fitting bathing suit. And that's when I swam halfway across to Constance Point. And when the day liner went up the street between me and Whitestone, I decided I better turn around and swim back. I would have landed in the Bronx without any clothes except a bathing suit.
Well, what were you saying about Connie?
Connie
being an old woman?
Connie was made
What's that
up
got to do with now?
as an old woman. And now that she's
An old woman?
80 years old,
As old as you?
I wonder if she feels like she finally accomplished what the makeup artist had to.
What play was that?
Hmm?
What play was that she was...
I think
It was at the Strollers, and I think they had a makeup artist that said he could make anybody up to a certain age, or, you know, that he was good at making up people, and she volunteered.
I don't remember her having that part. You asked her
She
what...
wasn't in a play.
It wasn't a play?
She was in the audience, and the makeup artist came down out of the theater stage and made her up like...
Oh, Charles, I don't Oh, she wasn't in the play.
No, she was just in the audience.
Oh, I don't remember anything about that. You ask her when we see her in a couple of weeks what that's all about. I don't remember that. I thought you meant she was in a play.
She had a veil over her head like a, what do they call it, a Mexican, you know, with not the comb in the back, but what do they call it, a Mexican chaperone. What do they call them, the women?
I don't know what you mean.
When they chaperone the young girl on the balcony, when the man plays the guitar on the...
I don't know what you're talking about. I never heard of having a chaperone.
Well,
I thought you were talking about that she took the part of an old woman because she very seldom was in those plays. She usually was painting scenery or backstage doing something.
Yeah, no, this was a volunteer thing that she thought, I'll let her make me up. She wore a mantilla.
A mantilla, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was.
You mean they made her up right down there in the audience?
In the audience.
And there was a play going on?
No, it was after the play or interview.
Oh, you got to ask her about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't remember that?
No.
I remember that. You see, she was trying to look like her mother.
Oh, Charles, I don't believe it. Oh, what do you mean she was trying to look like her mother if the guy was making her up?
If she was 50 years old, she tried to look 70 or 80.
Incidentally, you know, here we are celebrating her 80th. It seems like yesterday they were celebrating her mother's 80th. They made a big thing about that. Mrs. Larson was 80. You know, well, it was when she was married, Connie was married to George. Of course.
That would be 25 years ago.
Well, they got married in 63. And her mother probably died in, well, it was when we went to Mexico in 73. So it was, she probably was around 82 or 3 when she died. So, you know, that was a year after Mother died. But she, well, they were about the same age, because Mother was 83 when she died, wasn't she?
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, anyway, I don't know. I thought you, I don't know, I thought you were talking about a part she had in a play.
No. This fellow, this whatever it is, a person that makes people up.
I forget, the makeup artist, I forget who they used to have the Strollers used to have as a makeup artist for all their plays.
Yeah.
And as far as the Prospector plays that I was in, the makeup people were just members of the group. They weren't any professionals.
Yeah. You remember those sisters that we know that in New York that lived out in Brookville, Long Island?
When I was talking about the other day that said Bruce would like educator cracks, and I didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah.
Mrs. What was their name?
I've forgotten, but the one was a makeup artist and television.
Wasn't she Constance?
Constance.
One of them was Constance, and
Yeah, I forget.
Brigham.
The Brigham sisters, right?
They lived in Oyster Bay.
Yeah, and they sold their New York apartment to some consulate, like a consulate of Egypt or Israel or something. One of the two. Right off Fifth Avenue.
Well, that place they lived in Oyster Bay was like a Italian villa or something.
It was a copy of Versailles.
Oh, French.
Copy of Versailles.
But we went over there. We visited them when we lived in Huntington when Bruce was a baby, and we took him over there. And Mrs. Brigham, they gave us tea and crumpets or something. And Mrs. Brigham kept saying, "Oh, the baby would like educator cracks. That's what you should get for him, educator cracks." And I didn't know what the dickens she was talking about. She was talking about Ritz crackers. Because they used to call them educator cracks. I don't know whether they still do.
Yeah, well, they raised those little dogs that looked like lambs.
Bedlington Terriers.
Yeah.
They weren't little.
No, size of a lamb.
Pretty big dogs.
Yeah. Pretty dogs. And the place they had was, they had some man that had bought the stairway from some mansion, and
They had marble imported from Italy, and
when they used to go to these auctions, and they were going to do the Versailles replica over.
I think they were all slightly
Nutty.
off
A
key.
little bit.
Slightly off key. All three of them.
They were driving a Cadillac.
Oh, yeah. I think you have to be off key to be able to afford a Cadillac.
But they originally were introduced to me through my job at the bank, Mount Madison Avenue, and they had an account with us. And when they rented their place, they got a fabulous rent
For what place? What do you mean?
for the building they owned off Fifth Avenue up around the 80s. Some foreign consulate rented it. And then that enabled them to buy this mansion out.
I wonder who had owned that mansion where they lived.
You wonder what?
Who had owned the mansion where they lived in Oyster Bay?
Well, they bought it, but
From whom? I mean, who had it belonged to?
I don't know. But wasn't half of it used by somebody else? It was sort of a building, but someone else owned part of it. Rented part of it. But they were.
Well, you talk about Bruce and Susan buying the schoolhouse, this great big building that's half empty. How could, those women, well, it was like 3/4 empty. It was just like a big palace, and they were in like one
They had the
part of it. I don't even remember. I vaguely remember going and seeing one of the bedrooms and the kitchen. And of course, we sat in the living room, and it seemed like the ceiling was about 30 feet tall.
Yeah, well, I know they had.
And the whole place just echoed. It was just like a museum or something. No furniture to speak of in there.
Well,
That's all I can remember. And outside, when you approached it from the outside, it was like the ruins of Pompeii or something.
well, on one side of the building, right where they were. Of course, they had the gardens, and they had the bird's nest in the tree trunk that they showed Bruce.
It showed Bruce. He was about 6 months old.
And they were able to buy this.
He wasn't even 6 months old because we moved from Huntington before he was 6 months old.
Was that long ago?
That long ago, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the driveway. You came in the driveway, and the house was above it.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, getting back to Connie, when we get to this party, you ask her about that, whatever you're talking about, and then you ask Bob, and I hope he's going to be well enough to be there, about a couple of the Prospector plays, one of which I was in that I remember that he was in. That one was called Billy's Tombstone. The other one, when I was the old lady walking around leaning on a cane, I don't know whether he was in that one or not. Ruth was in it, and Charlie Remlinger was in it. Wilma was in it. But I don't think Bob was in that one. But I think, or it could be, one of those plays, I think I was supposed to be Bob's mother. And after I had a couple of those parts, my mother got really mad because she says, they're going to type you. You shouldn't accept those parts anymore.
Well, That was before Alice something.
Alice who?
The girl that played in the Strollers.
Oh, that was the Strollers. I'm talking about the Prospectors.
Oh, that's different.
Alice Andreessen you're
I thought
talking
it was
about.
the same group.
No. That's two different things. The Prospectors was at the Presbyterian Church, and the Strollers was just an independent theater group, a little theater group that met at the Women's Club.
I like the one about Mark Twain.
That didn't have anything to do with either of them. I don't know who did Mark Twain there.
Oh,
That was at the Women's Club.
yeah, well,
Yeah, it was.
I remember
It was at the Women's Club, but it wasn't anything to do with Strollers, I don't think.
I remember.
Oh, yeah, it was. I know who it was. Yes, it was to do with Strollers. It was one of the fellows that used to take a lot of the leading parts.
And Connie's intimate friend, who
Uh,
now goes with
I mean, Herbie?
Herbie. He painted the scenery.
Well, he painted a lot of the scenery, and that's how Connie got so friendly with him, because she painted scenery, too. Herbie takes out, still to this day, I guess, takes out Peggy Stone.
He worked for the map company,
Hammond Map, right.
but he must be retired from this.
Oh, well, he's got to be 80 years old, Charles.
Oh, the poor old thing. I guess he's decrepit. But he goes around with the woman that works in the library.
No, Peggy Stone, who worked for, oh, I don't know who she worked for. Both of them, they might be at this party for Connie. Very well. It's very possible that they'll be at the party.
That would be a good case of reminiscing.
Well, of course, you've met him, right?
Yeah,
But I don't know whether you ever met Peggy.
Well, I think I never.
She had a lot of leading roles, too, in the Stroller plays.
Yeah, but he's kind of a wimp.
Well, I don't know what he is. I always often wondered.
I think he's queer. I mean,
Well, that's what I mean. I don't know about him. Connie used to go out with him once in a while, but nothing serious.
oh, anybody that went out with Connie was serious.
No, she never said anything was serious with him. She just went out with him, but now and then. But
More than that was when she finally got hooked up with George. He was a nice guy. I liked him.
yeah, George
I'm
was
still
good.
wearing some of his shirts.
Yeah, thanks to George, you got a lot of clothes you're still wearing. Thanks to George, thanks to Connie. But to me, that's utterly ridiculous that a friend of mine could be 80. I've known Connie since she was, what, 27. I was 20 when I met her. And I started working now, and she's 7 years older than I am, just like you are, so she was 27.
I wonder if she's still selling cosmetics.
Oh, she is. She is. Not as much, of course, but she has those customers that call her. Just like Nancy Roding now did you read where she's talking about the Apple Harvest Festival? The magazines that are publicizing, advertising for the Apple Harvest Festival are now calling her. She says, I'm not calling them, they're calling me. Well, it's the same thing, those customers, wealthy women that Connie got as customers one way or another for that cosmetic thing. They call her when they run out of stuff. I don't think she does much pursuing of that anymore. She doesn't have to.